for that very kind introduction. And thank you to Aditya for inviting us to be on this panel and take part in today's proceedings. So thank you everyone. So as we heard right now, the whole theme of today's discussion in the early part of the day was about wealth management and family businesses and basically how professionals manage the business and grow the wealth, etc. So let's change topic, let's change gear a little bit, and let's now focus on the family and the wealth creation itself. So for a family to create wealth and be successful, the two parts of the family business have to work in harmony, namely the family and the professional management in the family business itself. So the theme for today's panel actually is working together in a family business. So as we heard right now, all three individuals on the panel with me today are promoters and family members of some very large and some very complex family businesses. And I think the way they run and sort of make the company successful is by having a very professional and a very competent team helping them do the same, working alongside and harmoniously with the family as well. So let's explore this theme a little bit today. Let's explore how the family works with professional management, how the family works inter-family between generation 1, generation 2, the parents, the sons, the uncles, and how they work with their brothers and sisters as well. So we have very little time, so let's dive right in. So the first question on this theme of working together in a family business is, how exactly on a day-to-day level, how does your family work with the professional management that you have? So, for example, in Karan's case right now, he's the CEO of his company, but he has a very large and diversified sort of, promoter group in logistics, in ports, in power, and, various other things. So sort of taking that as a proxy, for example, how do you, Karan, sort of work with the professional management in your company?
So thank you, Rishabh. For us, we have a very clear understanding in the sense that we have a professional management who will be running the day-to-day operations of in each business. And the family promoters are there to handhold certain relationship and to give the vision and to look at the larger picture. And so we have a very clear understanding and role division between both promoters as well as professional with the professionals. At the same time, also one of the things that as a family we do is that before we get into that role, any new member who enters the business has to go through the whole grind from the bottom. So he or she has to work from the bottom and work his way up. And before he takes or he or she takes a position of an actual promoter, they have to work as a professional to prove themselves, because unless you do that, it's very hard to to give that vision and to understand how they think. So that's how we divide our work. And when it comes to promoter, people, multiple promoters working in the group. So I have my uncle, my dad, and my cousins also in the business. So we have a very clear, at least as a second gen, we have been given individual responsibility of each business, and that allows us to grow individually as well as gives us the space to develop the business the way we want it.
Okay, thank you. So Rohan, so as we heard right now, your company had a very successful IPO, barely a few weeks ago. So I think there'll be a lot of pressure, expectation on you to now scale up the business and sort of grow your team, grow your people who you work with. So how do you sort of foresee that whole thing playing out, and how will your professional team expand as your business also grows?
Sure. So thank you very much, Rishabh. So first of all, I'm from Bhopal. So getting professionals to Bhopal is the bigger challenge. I think us working along with them is the smaller challenges that we face. So once we have good professionals, so the way it's structured in our business is we have our family. So it's me, my dad, and my younger brother who's involved. And then we have a co-promoter who's involved. So there are 4 of us promoters who are involved in the daily running of the business. And beneath us, there are a bunch of professionals who are handling their own specific verticals. So the way we have structured it is, we've tried to empower each of these guys and given them fair amount of autonomy in terms of how they handle their own verticals and the kind of responsibilities they have. So they're free to choose their teams, and as long as they maintain whatever KRAs we need to get. And eventually we evaluate them on that. So even though there is a certain amount of hand-holding that we do along with the process, and we try and take feedback from them, from the team that works under them, but we keep ourselves fairly out of their hair when it comes down to daily running of their respective areas. Now, going forward, I think for any business as you're growing, currently we are present in 16 states. We are India's largest road construction company. Going forward, I think it is very, very important to delegate as you're growing and have that kind of faith in your team that you've picked, and then allow them to do their job. So I think going forward, we'll probably do the same thing that we've done till now. It's a model that worked well for us, and we don't foresee, making any major changes to how we do things, but only small, slight changes that we'll continue to do along the way.
Okay, thank you. So Devavrat, so what we heard right now is that you fall into two buckets. So you have your traditional family business, which your family has been running for generations, I think Safari Industries. And then what we heard is also you have your own new startup, Brainer. So what is the relationship that's there between your startup and your family business, and how do the two sort of work together in case they do?
Rishabh, thank you for the question. And what I've noticed is that in the real estate space, in the retail space, and in the edtech space, the culture of these three businesses are totally different. The management hierarchy is totally different. So my uncle and my father, they're given set roles in each of the businesses, where they're looking after each different vertical. And we tend to give each other opinions about the company and the way you should take the company forward, but we tend not to give advice to the professional teams in each of the businesses. Simply because we, as Rohan said, we believe in delegation, and more than that, we want to keep the company culture of each business alive without interfering with it.
Okay, thank you. I want to just pick up on one theme that sort of three of you touched on, what you said right now, actually, believe in delegation. So you're second gen, third gen. So your business is relatively young in that way, 20, 30 years old. So how did the dynamic between the promoter family and the professional management evolve? Is something that just happened overnight? Did you do it in a very structured manner? Do you have a documented way of doing it? So a simpler question to ask maybe is that, what does a promoter family do? What do your professional guys do, and what sort of the relationship between them in that way? So yeah, open to all of you. Maybe Rohan.
So the professional guys, like I mentioned, they run their, the finance guys, the operation guys, the bidding teams, the quality guys. So all different teams, they run their own respective areas, and they manage those parts. So we don't go and micromanage those things. Like, we've assigned, okay, these are the minimum guidelines that we need to achieve. This is what we're expecting out of them. And then they're free to decide how they want to pick their teams and the way that they want to get that output from their team members. Post that, we're only looking at how the results came out. So not even as much as the results are important, we also definitely look at the process that was involved to get those results, because you want to maintain a certain amount of values that the company has, whether it's the ethics and the responsibilities that we feel towards our stakeholders. So as long as it all falls within that bracket, we try to sort of keep that distinction between where we coming in, stepping in, as opposed to what my regular guys do. Because, professionals, ultimately what they look for is, a sense of respect and a sense of autonomy, because you won't get good talent unless you give them those two important things. So we try to keep it fairly, like I said, autonomous.
Karan?
So let me answer the other part of your question, that whether it was documented or whether it was done in a structured way. So I think I wouldn't say it was documented, but for us, it was a journey of almost 25, 26 years. And just looking at the past, I think it was it was a change, systematic change. It's not something that happens in in 1 year or at a certain point of time. It just happens slowly. And I think I agree with what Rohan said, that end of the day, professionals look for respect and autonomy. to work. And I think I just want to add over here is that for us where we as a family or as a promoter where we come in is more from the growth point of view, because what we find is that yes, you can delegate work down below and decisions down below, but and there will be entrepreneurship at that level, but when you're looking to grow your business much faster than your competitors, there are certain risks that only a promoter can take rather than, and you can't leave that only purely on a professional or a professional CEO. So I think a mix of, I think the professionals and the promoters, I think if the chemistry is right, it gives the right checks and balance for a business where you don't end up taking too much risk or leveraging yourself too much. At the same time, you don't become too conservative.
Do you believe that the risks, that you believe that the mindset is always aligned between your professional and your promoter family? Because like you said right now, ultimately the risk will be borne by the family no matter what. It's their name, their company, their entire fortune on the line maybe. So do you see always that the mindset is aligned, and if not, so what do you think that is for?
So I don't think that, I mean, I wouldn't say it's always aligned, but I think what is important is to have communication, have regular communication to explain your point of view. And I think before any decision is taken, it's important to have a buy-in from professional CEOs or professionals in that way. Because yes, you can take the decision, but end of the day, execution has to be done by them, and there's not so much of micromanaging you can do. So I think that dialogue is required, that continuous dialogue, and there has to be a buy-in from everybody.
Dev, thoughts?
I mostly agree with what Rohan and Karan have said, and I do think that some form of delegation and autonomy is required. So drawing from my startup in the edtech space, I do have two co-founders who have given some opportunity cost to come work for my company, and they have skin in the game, and that's very important at that level to bring in more ideas and to motivate and to stay motivated. Now talking about my real estate business, that's significantly different. That involves a lot of risk, and that always doesn't work out well with the professional management team. As Karan was pointing out earlier, that there's certain risks that only a promoter can take and not the professional management team. So that's what I would like to add.
Sure, thank you. So let's change gear a little bit now. So we explored how all of you work together with your professional management. Now, how do you work with your family? So as we heard right now, both Karan and Rohan have younger brothers, whose younger brother is called Karan, coincidentally. And Dev has 3 younger sisters who are studying right now. So what is sort of, can you say broadly, the dynamic in your younger generation? And also, how do you work with your parents and uncles in the business? So is it always business? Do you always sort of are on the same page? Do you have different aspirations? Do you sort of, are you all aligned? How is that whole thing playing out within the family? Rohan?
Sure. So I have a younger brother, and he's 3 years younger to me.
He's also in the business.
He's also in business. He's more on the operations side, while I handle certain finance functions, certain planning, some legal aspects where I get to deal with pleasant lawyers such as you. So, I handle, actually I'm the guy who handles a lot of professionals, or the chartered accountants, the tax guys. So because I take care of all of that, and my brother is purely on the operation side. So we're very, very different personality types as well. And I think there are very different personality types when you're handling operation, especially our sector is, very much about, being out there, working, in really extreme conditions. When you're building a public infrastructure, you have a lot of stakeholders involved. You will have the guy who, uses that road to commute every day. You will have media, you will have NGOs, you will have the local politicians, villages. So there's so many stakeholders. So, you have to sort of, the way that you're dealing there, it is a little bit more, I guess, harsh than when you would be dealing with the kind of, the professionals that I have to deal with. So it's very different personality types. But what happens is, both for me and my brother, because we're dealing with other areas, that keeps, we're not stepping on each other's toes. But the way that both of us have divided, we try to learn from each other. Whatever I'm doing, I always tell him that, hey, there's some guy that I've called in, you should come down, maybe this might add some new dimension to what you're doing. And similarly, whenever he's on site, I try to make it a point to go there, visit him, ask questions about, how he's handling certain areas, why is he doing a certain thing. Because I think just by the fact that you ask questions and you try to sort of think loudly, maybe it helps you sort of understand better when you get those answers from people. B, it also makes the other person think about those issues that maybe they had not thought about. So maybe I'll take a learning, and if he's, let's say, dealing with an engineering problem, and maybe I'll say, hey, do you think that you might be able to sort of apply this kind of thought process to it? And it has helped us in the past. So we try and keep that kind of balance. When it comes to dealing with my dad, I usually go to him with whatever I've done, and then look at him as more of a, steward and guidance sort of from him.
Karan?
So let me answer the first one, that is intergeneration. So I have two cousins who are in business with me. And for us, as I said, that it was, all three of us have been given individual business to run. But at the same time, since ours is an integrated business, we have to work with each other. Though we get we are responsible for our business, it's important that we also understand other one's business as well. What are the problems? What are the opportunities over there? Because if that business is doing good, it will automatically lead to my business as well doing good. So for us, it's more of having regular communication, regular dialogue, and for us, it's like breakfast, lunch, dinner. It's business, and so all conversations are related to business, and so that's one way that there's no communication gap between all of us. And so far, it has worked very well for us. Touch wood. And when it comes to first gen to second gen, so my dad and my uncle, they look after. They are overall responsible. So we look for them for more of as mentors and to guide us into strategic part of the business, and to get the strategic help. How they think about on growing the business, and how we should be looking at the business if we are combining it together. So I think there are that helps us in getting strength, and that's how we look at it.
Good, thank you. So Dev, I think yours is a very interesting example. So like I was saying, you have three younger sisters, and it's maybe controversial, but the traditional expectation maybe that they join their husband's business, or move to the husband side of the business when they get married. So how do you see that whole thing playing out?
Sure.
Suppose they don't want to join, what will happen?
Sure. I would like to first comment on working across generations. So we have 3 generations working together in the same office. My grandfather, father, and me. And I think that that's actually a competitive advantage for our family business. So there are a lot of things that are passed on from generation to generation, the art of negotiation, tricks of the trade, timing, which is passed on, and I think that's helped us a lot in making key decisions. Now, when you're talking about intergenerations, I have 3 sisters, and one of my sisters currently is in the luggage business. And when she joined Safari, the colors that Safari were using was actually very one-toned, and there was only one shade. But when she came in with her unique perspective, she added different colors to it. And that itself added a new product line in the business, which is doing very well today. So women inclusion is extremely important in the business, and that has actually helped steer the growth of Safari today. So.
Good, thank you. I want to just pick up on one thing that sort of Rohan touched upon, is that your dad is your steward in guidance, I think you had mentioned. So So do you think in your case, or sort of generally in the Indian context, sort of families judge families differently from professionals? So suppose one of the kids screws up in the business or something bad happens. So do you think the consequences will always be the same for a family versus a professional? Sort of, do you get fired and then go for a family picnic, and then sort of, how does that whole thing play out? How are you judged in that sort of family context? It's a tough one.
So the consequences for professionals versus family are always going to be going to be different because your boss is also your father. So while on one hand he tries to balance being the boss and try to keep you in an evil place, but then he's also trying to teach you a valuable lesson when he does that. And it's definitely a trickier rope for him to walk than for me. Then coming in, but for me the shame is bigger if I am not delivering something which is expected out of me. Then it's how do I build credibility within my company, because it's something that tomorrow I have to come and take a larger role in the organization. So if I am not doing a good job today, I am doing disservice A to the company, and B, I'm also raising questions in the minds of my professionals, who are, essentially they are the ones who are running the company. We set the vision, like, Karan said, it's the founder will take those risks and, he will define what needs to be done. But ultimately, you need a team to whatever you do. And for getting the best team, they need to see that, the leader has that quality that will help them sail through. So it's, it's always, it's definitely going to be easy, when you are a part of the family compared to professionals. But then the responsibilities on you are also bigger. And, I think it's as much as, you're trying to sort of answer to external, just you're also trying to answer to yourself, prove yourself over and over again, that you're worthy of being in the position that you have kind of been thrust upon given your credentials.
Good, thank you. Karan?
I just want to add on to what Rohan said, that consequences for a second gen of a promoter is much more than than professional management, because yes, okay, fine, 1 or 2 mistakes, it's okay, but when you are continuously not performing, as you rightly said, your leadership is being questioned, and 2, for professional management, there's always an option. Tomorrow he or she gets fired, there is always an option to join some other company, or for us, if we are not performing well, there's no other option. You are left with, okay, yes, you will still be shareholder, but you can't be running your company then, because end of the day, the company takes a much larger, the group takes a much larger part than just being a promoter.
So borrowing from the previous question, as we had discussed, that family members tend not to interact with the professional management team. So in my case, it's, I think my father would give me a way harder time than he would give my management team or my co-founders in this case, because I'm the one who's making the decisions and I'm the one who's talking to him on a daily basis about my operations. So it's actually going to be harder for the promoter than the professional management team.
Thank you. Sort of building on the last 2 questions, or sort of building on this last one especially, suppose things don't go well, suppose something does go wrong, suppose there's a difference of opinion between your parents, your brother maybe, of the professional guys, sort of what happens then? So maybe in your family business sort of situations, do you have a formal conflict mechanism sort of put in place? Is it documented? Have you any sort of examples you can share publicly? You don't have to, about when things went bad and sort of how was it solved? Did it affect stakeholders? Did it affect the family? So can you share some thoughts on conflict in your family business? Rohan?
I see it seems that I'm being picked upon right now. So, sure, I guess in every relationship, you have your ups and downs, and we will always have conflicts, and disputes will always be a reality of any relationship. Managing it is always the key, whether you're doing it in your personal relationships or whether you're doing it, in your professional relationships. I think the most important aspect for any dispute resolution is an open and honest communication. A communication where you respect the views of the person on the opposite side, and then you hear out someone patiently, and then also give out your thoughts and process something. So I think the way, our family is very small right now. It's just me, my dad, my brother, and my mom, and there's the three of us involved. So when I think, we'll have more family members involved or something, that will be a bigger challenge. But right now, the way, even though we've set up a formal dispute resolution mechanism for later, we've set up a trust, we've set up a family constitution of how we want to sort of, tackle any issue. But as of now, we mostly just talk about things. And, if I have a certain perspective and my brother has a certain perspective or my dad will have a certain perspective, I will at least lay down my side of the story, point out what are the pros and cons according to me, and then try and have a healthy debate with the other person. And I think that's the same way that my brother also kind of talks with me.
Dev?
So difference of opinion has always been there between the first, second and third generation. I'll give you this example where when I come back from Bangalore, I open my wardrobe and I see a bunch of newspaper cuttings that my father has left for me about this startup that has closed, this startup has laid off 100 employees, and I need to take those newspaper clippings to him and I need to sit and answer each one of them with another question that, what if they did it this way? So I think having a very healthy conversation and a debate should always be there. My father is my biggest devil's advocate, and that's helped me a lot today. In order for him to see eye to eye with me, I often take him for a lot of my meetings, a lot of startup events at places like Lead Angels, IAN, where he gets to know about what's happening in the industry. And I think that's helped a lot. But at the same time, my father respects my decisions, and he lets me take my fair amount of risk that I need to take in order to run my venture.
I think if you ask me, constructive conflict is always good because that gives out lots of different views and also gives you a lot of creative ideas. But I think, as Rohan and Devavrat both said that there has to be a healthy debate. There has to be, you have to create that atmosphere that people are able to voice their opinion freely. At the same time, you're respecting each other's opinion. Only thing I will just add that end of the day, when it comes to either a business or even if you take in personal life or at family, even on your personal side, there has to be one person who should be taking a decision, and then everybody has to fall in line in that. After a decision taken, and once a decision is taken, and even after that, there is brewing of questioning that decision and continuously questioning. That's when it becomes unhealthy, and that's when it becomes destructive. And at that time, you have to take a call whether how to deal with it, whether it's on professional management, whether it's even on the personal side, or whether it's in family business. So I think it's very important that whoever it is, there has to be one person who takes a fair view, who gives, who understands everybody's views, who hears from everybody's side, from everybody, and then takes a fair decision. And once a decision is taken, it has to be like sort of a final order. So everybody has to fall in line.
I just want to question that a little bit. So what you were saying right now is typically decision is taken by the promoter, the head of the family, and then sort of people fall in line. But sort of, what we see as advisors is that that's not always the case, that, people question decisions, they have their own views on how things are run. And, more often than not, as we see people even go to court to actually, prove who's right. So do you see that sort of working out well? Do you see it sort of creating more friction than happiness? So
I think there could be two reasons, if I may. Either we have not heard the other side of the story fully, or the other side feels that fair chance has not been given. But if that is the case, if a fair chance has been given, and end of the day a healthy debate has happened, and then a decision has been taken, and even after that there is questioning and brewing. So then there is I would say a deeper issue in the relationship, and that's when you have to take a call whether whether it makes sense to continue or not.
Yes, to sort of explore that even further. So you're saying the secret sauce, if in a way, to having sort of constructive conflict is that having a formal debate, a formal discussion, sort of, giving people sides, opportunity to explain their point of view. So do you think there is huge merit in having a, proper documented sort of in place, pre-approved way of handling conflict, or you think something that just evolves over time and takes place?
I genuinely believe that it evolves over time. Yes, you can't document each and every possibility of conflict that you can arise, but it has to be evolved. Yes, it's good to document certain things. It's good to document from your past experience, but I genuinely believe that you can't think of every possible scenario in life. It has to be evolving, and I do believe that that flexibility should be there whenever you are having that constructive debate, or that flexibility both in terms of your perspective to have that open mind to understand what the other side is saying, and even if they are right, then it should not go into ego in the sense that just because I've said it, this is how I think about it, this is the only way. So it should not just be a paper process where you're having a healthy debate, but in genuine case, you should be actually having a healthy debate. So even if you believe that the other side is right, there should not be any shame in admitting that this is the right way of doing it. That's the whole point of having that checks and balance.
So Rohan, you were saying right now that your family has a formal family constitution in place, and you do have a documented conflict mechanism. So how do you reconcile that with what Karan is saying, that if you have a preset, pre-agreed formula of how things should escalate and go, how will that play out? Is it a tick the box approach, or do you see there's still having flexibility is good for the system?
I think Karan is very right about the how as time passes, things evolve, things change, and even with a constitution, it is more to be taken as a guideline going forward. Not necessarily as you have to follow each and every bit to the T, but understand the spirit behind what was written and what was needed. As time passes, things may change, things may evolve, and you probably would need to sort of, you will definitely be faced with situations where this would be outside the scope of whatever you have documented. I think in that sense, a certain amount of faith in each other. And, I think for this, probably being the larger one and starting out and being sort of open to other people's ideas usually augurs well when you're trying to resolve a dispute, because I think you need to give due credit where it's due, and then try and see if there is some common ground that you can reach. And not necessarily at every place you will reach a common ground, but then, such is life that, at certain times you do have to take unpopular decisions. And, it's also, I think part of experience, it's like, experience also gives you instinct about things. So you then trust whoever is the most experienced, and then you let, things take their course. And you can't always win, right?
So Dev, how would that same thing work out in sort of your case?
So I've stayed in a joint family for all my life, and I'm staying in a 17-member joint family. So every morning we have this ritual where we all just sit in my grandfather's veranda and we talk business. Coming from a Marwari family, we're talking business morning, lunch, dinner. Every single day we're just talking about business. So if they ask me the same questions on a daily basis, then I know that I'm on the wrong track. But at the same time, I think having other people's opinions in my business is extremely important, and that's what serves as a check and balance for me. Talking about conflict, I don't think that paperwork solves it. I think across generations, people will have different perspectives and viewpoints, but what stays the same is the level of trust, and that's what the joint family is actually built on.
Good, thank you. So I want to just draw all these sort of ideas together and just sort of get your views on So have you heard ideas today about family constitutions, about working professional management, working with your family, your brothers, sisters, etc. So for each of you personally, what does succession planning mean to you? So is it something that should be sort of thought through in advance, something that evolves over time and then we see how it goes, or sort of what are the personal sort of aspirations and lessons that you have on succession planning?
You want me to say? So I think succession planning has to be well thought through, well planned, because it's not a 2 or 3 year process. It's a journey of, in my mind, it's a journey of at least 15 to 20 years, and it's both of formal education, it's on mentorship, it's on understanding the DNA of the group and the family, and carrying that on. And I think most important in succession planning is to lay down the expectation, what is the expected attitude, behavior, competence for becoming a leader, so that you know what's your bar, and you know where you have to reach, what is the minimum that you have to achieve to reach there. So at least I believe that it's a long process, but I think you have to use a lot of, and it has to be, I genuinely believe that it has to be on meritocracy. It cannot be just because you are born into the family, and that does not give you the right to run the company. Yes, that gives you the right to become a shareholder of the company, but it does not give you the right to, if you're not the correct leader, or you're not the right leader to take the group forward. I genuinely believe it's you don't have the, so you have to compete with everybody else.
You're also in a family office seminar right now. So what do things like family office mean to you?
The family office, we use it more for both as an investment, also to secure. To make sure that the future is secured, at least for the family, so you don't have to worry about, you don't have to, at back of your mind, you don't have to, you're not working towards, to create your wealth, but then you are working towards, creating a legacy. So we believe that, so if that is out of your, you don't have to worry about it, that, so that helps you in driving your business better. We look at it this way.
Rohan?
For family office or succession?
Both.
So succession, I guess, adding on to whatever Karan said, and I think he's covered most of the points, how one should be thinking about it. I think personally, when I think of succession planning, I think there are 2 parts to it. What is the core value that you want to sort of inculcate in the family and the kids? So for me personally, I'll say, whatever happens, the most important thing to remember is that we are a family, and while we may have ups and downs in business or in personal relationships, it's also it's very, very important for you to inculcate within your kids and your family that there is no point ever fighting it out in public, like you mentioned, or trying to wash it. So it's most important to just center on one thing, that we are and we will be a family, and that is the most important strength. Second, I think when talking about business, I think succession planning to me means perpetuity of a business, how to ensure that it runs throughout generations, and for that setting up the right kind of practices, policies that you need to do as a steward, whether it is the kind of systems that you need to put in place to make your kids, or for my father to have made us understand that this is not your God-given right, or not by virtue, but this is something that you have to earn. So there has to be a certain amount of meritocracy into it. So I think that's basically, like I said, that's how I would think about succession planning personally as well. Family office, again, it's part of a, it's a vehicle for, even if you're a shareholder in the business and you're not really actively participating in it, or even if you're an active participant, this is a way to sort of, whatever little you've sort of set aside from your business and you're looking at other ventures outside your business, outside your core interests, I think it's a good vehicle to sort of use to get those investments.
So the common thing is both is that you use family offices to sort of keep something aside for a rainy day, instead of not really to do too much on your main operating business, if at all.
I mean, it's, yes, it's that, to keep something aside from what we are already doing. B, it's also, when, family increases and there might be certain other interests that certain other members might want to pursue. So if you want to do that, there has to be some, wealth that you've created in your personal, in that, at least you can start at a small place somehow. Even if, someone wants to start at a small place, at least
Just
you
like
can
a
take that
seed
risk.
fund for something that the family may want to do, some other venture or something.
Exactly.
Okay.
It's important to, to make sure that personal interest, other than, if certain family members have certain different interests than family, to make sure that that does not affect the day-to-day, running of the business, because that is sacrosanct. You cannot confuse your investors and your shareholders by doing something funny into that, just because you want to keep, you want to keep one person happy in the family.
Succession planning or family office?
Both.
All right. Typically, what I've seen is that in Western countries, succession planning and across generations, the family office tends to disappear and professional management tends to step in. But at least in India, and at least as we discussed earlier, that from a very young age, you're included in family discussions. You know about what's happening in the family business. So I think that succession planning, as Karan said, is not a 1 year, 2 year game. It's more like a 15 year, 20 year game where you're actually built into it. And of course, it should be merit based, and not because you're just born into the family that you deserve to run it. Secondly, with a family office, I think that with a family office, the risk-taking capacity within the family increases. It's because you're working with a bunch of different directors and family members. So if one person is suffering from a loss, then the other person is actually is there to support you, and you don't feel the hit very easily running a family office.
Yeah, thank you. Well, thank you very much for a very open and frank discussion. We got some good ideas about how things work in your businesses. I think we have time for a few questions now from the audience. So, anybody? Question? Yes, sort of say who you are and who the question is for.
Hi, my name is Hansi. Rishabh knows me. In fact, this question could be for Rishabh as well. But actually something you said, Rohan. You said you were the older brother and you handle the professionals, and your younger brother handles the operations.
I can't hear you very clearly, sorry.
You said you were the older brother and you
I am the older brother.
You are, yeah.
I'm the older,
I know,
yeah.
yeah. And you said you handle the professionals, right? You handle the front and he handles the operations.
Right.
Here's a question. Did you decide that just based on personality, or did you do a psych test or some sort of aptitude test to say, okay, you were better at it, or your comparative advantage was dealing with professionals and your younger brother was that of operations? First part of the question. Second part is, if both of you were good at, say, the front, okay, both of you wanted it, did you get it just because you were the older brother, or how would you have resolved that?
It seems I spoke a lot. I'm the only one who's in your crosshairs right now. So
I have questions for the others as well.
Of course, no, I'm just kidding. So I, to answer the first part of your question, how it so happened was, luckily in our case, whatever I had studied and whatever my interests lay, I did my master's in finance and management, so I did a double major there. So I was more focused and was more keen towards those areas. And somehow he was always more keen on the operation part of it, and construction management, he wanted to do that. Eventually he didn't, but he was very focused on those areas. He got too involved in the business. So luckily for us, we didn't have to really have that, I want this, you want this, something. So that was one part of it, kind of fell in a good place. Second part of your question, whether if we had been in a situation where both of us would have wanted the same thing, what would we have done? I think as an older brother, it is my responsibility if I feel my younger brother is expecting, wanting something more, then I would actually want for him to take that lead on it and be supportive in whatever he wants to do. I don't know, somehow that's how I think about it. Like, I have very little requirements in life, and if at all he's feeling, that there is something that he wants to take a more, proactive step in or something he wants to lead, I'm more than happy for him to do that. Even within ourselves, I don't really feel that if I'm older, I should be the one leading. If he's doing a better job and, if he's more keen, sure, why we shouldn't be doing it? Like, titles and, responsibility, it doesn't really change a lot personally for me. So, as long as I'm able to contribute meaningfully to, to our organization or to his growth or, to the business growth, like I said.
The same thing applied to you, Karan? Same younger brother?
No, my brother is still in college, so it's not even not even the same case. But I think I would, if I was to answer your question, I would a little bit differ with Rohan over here in the sense that if both the family members want to do the same thing, I think as a family, then somebody has to decide who is best suited to run the business. Yes, as a brother or as an elder brother, you can obviously take a personal call in saying that, but end of the day, you also have to look at somebody, some elder or somebody. I would leave it to either my parents or my father or my uncle to decide who is best suited to run that part of the business or to run that part of the operation.
But why not take an aptitude test or a psych test to actually independently help you decide what if your parents are biased?
The reason I would not agree, because I find that a lot of these aptitude tests, not all, majority of them don't give you the real picture because it's too. You can't get a personality view in just one test or two tests or three tests. It's something which, as I said, it's something which somebody who is observing you for 15, 20 years I feel that they are better judge. I would I would trust their judgment than a test or an aptitude test.
I would agree with Karan on that. So it's not always a very objective thing about, you got a better, one rank more on the aptitude test and you're the right choice for CEO. It's always a very, emotional call about, who the parent or who the, senior family members believe is the right person for the job. It may not always be the eldest, may not always be the most competent, but it just may so happen that who's got lucky at that time to get that position. So I don't think it's objective or emotional. I think it's somewhere in the middle, I think, would be the right way to decide sort of what would happen in your case.
And one follow-up question in case somebody else has a question. Somebody else? So while somebody else is thinking about it, one more question. I think, Dev, you said your sisters were much younger. Did any of you other have sisters? None of you have sisters?
No.
We've been unlucky that.
I was going to say, just luck happened. The question would be then hypothetical, I guess. Do you see your family, and especially you said you're a traditional Marwari family, would you see sisters actually having the right to be at the table to get equal share in the business, just like as if they were boys? Or is it, I was a little bit surprised when you said, okay, women inclusion and all that stuff, as if you're doing them a favor, as opposed to it being their right to be there. So one, is it their right? Do your parents see that the girls have the right? And two, how would you handle the incoming family members? Obviously, as you get married, you get people coming in. Say your wife wants to run something as well. How does a traditional Marwari family today handle that?
I'm sorry, I haven't got your name. What's your name again?
Hansi.
Okay, Hansi. So to answer the first part of the question, from a very young age, my sister has actually displayed interest in the family business. She's been a part of the dining table, so-called Marwari dining table. She's taken active interest in asking questions, in knowing things. And even when I was interning abroad during my undergrad, she was actually interning at the family office. So she took more interest than me from a very young age. To answer your second part of the question is, what's going to happen is if once she gets married and what's the plan in store for her. So I think she's going to be in a better position than me to understand the luggage business today. So across generations, we have a lot of trust amongst each other. So I do think that the business would be in better hands if she's handling it than me today. So it should go to the person who deserves it, and today it's her, so it's definitely, it should be her. Now talking about people, incoming members of my family, we are typically, my mother's a philanthropist, and she's been associated with Tata Memorial Hospital for 25 years. She has longer working hours than me and my father. So we are very pro-entrepreneurship, we are pro members of the family making their own decisions and doing their own things. So I think new family members are always welcome to try entrepreneurship or to attempt to handle one of the verticals of the business. I hope that answers your question.
It's okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any more last question? Okay, so thank you very much, panel. Thank you very much for your very frank and open discussion, and thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
That we come to the end of the conference. Thank you all for joining us today. I would like to quickly thank all our sponsors, Quant Capital, Sign Capital, Lily Bonds, Arthveda, Escorts Mutual Fund, and Capital Fort for supporting this initiative. And we hope all of you had a prolific day today. Looking forward to all of you joining us again next year this time. Thank you.